Hello, my name is David Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Patterson, and we are the directors of Rewired Consulting.
We would like to welcome you to the Rewired Consultant podcast featuring guests from across the IT industry.
We will be talking to technology leaders from all over New Zealand, providing unique insight and good chat with the people on the front line of innovation and transformation.
This series will give you a great opportunity to hear the stories of the people involved and create the strategy and vision for some of New Zealand's most interesting businesses. Hello and welcome back to the Rewired Consultant podcast with myself, David Ferguson, and my co-host, Sean Patterson. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Peter Goodman. Peter is one of New Zealand's leading engineering executives with a career spanning several innovative global product companies. He's now serving as Senior Vice President of Engineering at Auror, where he's helping to shape the future of retail crime intelligence. As a fellow Derry native, it's a real pleasure to have him on the show. And in this episode, Peter will share insights from his early career, his transition from hands-on technical work into people and organisational leadership, and how AI is already transforming productivity and efficiency in engineering, and the emerging roles he expects to become increasingly prominent in the years ahead. Peter, thanks very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, it's great.
Good stuff. Okay, so look, we always like to delve into our guests' past and get a bit of an idea of how they got their start in technology and how their career began. So where did it all begin for you?
I think growing up, like we grew up in Derry. I grew up there, but earlier than you did. Yeah, as a kid, like I was always into technology. I had an Amiga computer. I was like mad about it, and even those early days, I was mucking around. I wasn't much of a gamer, but I was into kind of creating things quite a lot. So I ended up I spent a bunch of time mucking around with things. I even remember in the early days, like some of the really early AI attempts, and kind of pulling those in and connecting it into Clippy and like they used to be in Microsoft Word and stuff.
Yeah.
So I got those things together, and I was like trying to create little AI bots and stuff way back, 30 something, 40 years ago. But it was, that was probably kind of always there. And then once I went to uni, I went to Queen's Belfast, and I was on my, I can't remember what I studied, electrical electronic engineering, I think, in the first role. But then I kind of ended up in the summer, like working for Dell, actually, doing tech support. There used to be a company in Derry called Stream that everybody I knew worked for, and they were all doing tech support. And so if you phoned up tech support in those days, you'd get somebody with a really weird Northern Irish accent to tell you how to read your computer. And so one of them was me. But I ended up basically writing software for them really quickly. And I kind of just got the bug at that point. It was like a summer job, and then I ended up working there for a year. I didn't go back to uni. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to I like earning money. I like programming. And that's what I did. And so I ended up like creating little applications so that the people could see their call times and all that kind of stuff. And so it was pretty amazing. That was my first foray into it, to be honest. And I was hooked from that.
So with that, because look, I work with Stream as well. So as you say, everybody's been through there. So it's basically like a big call center, and they've got lots of different partners who do different technical support. The likes of Dell, HP was one I was working on at the time, and stuff like that as well. But like when you were doing that, like how did the opportunity, like did you just see something that you needed to improve, and you were like, I'm going to build something that's going to make this run faster, or like how did you get that opportunity?
I think I probably blagged. So like I was paid like somebody on the phones, that was one of the problems. But I ended up, I think I was working with some of the trainers there, and they were like, yeah, we've got this thing, it's not working. So I can fix that. So, kind of blagged my way into it and started writing code. And then all of a sudden it was working, and I was, having an impact. And then that was just somebody just let me loose. And I think that was, it's, you kind of look back through your history, and there's a bunch of people that just said, okay, have a crack. And that's like, those are often the pivotal moments that are like, I could do that. And so you have a go, and it succeeds, and then you learn from it, or it fails and you learn from that and you move on. So
Yeah, Yeah, and then just obviously having the confidence to put yourself forward to do it as well. That's the other thing, because I'm sure people see opportunities all the time, but not
Yeah,
everyone acts on it. So it's good that you were like, right, I want to
yeah,
do something with
absolutely.
this.
You kind of um, like you should try and not fail, but you shouldn't be afraid of failing. You shouldn't let failing kind of stop you. And I think that's the bit. Like it can be crippling and debilitating, but this fear of failure. But like honestly, if you can get through that, you'll try and continuously improve. That there's a little bit of that fear that's like a driver and a motivator. So if you can control it, it's
Yeah.
actually really positive.
How old were you at the time, Pete?
So that would have been 19, 20, something like that, whenever I was working on stream.
Well, that's the thing, is like at that young age, it's kind of like you've got nothing really to lose, right?
Yeah.
So then you can kind of throw yourself in the deep end, and if it works out, then great. If it doesn't, it doesn't,
Totally.
right?
And I was, in Derry, like where I grew up, like there wasn't people were trying to get out of it, get out of the place. It was like you had to, otherwise you were stuck there. You saw people that worked and behind the bar in the local, in the town or whatever, and then you kind of can get stuck in a mode, and so you're looking for opportunities. You're looking for ways to try and better yourself. And so it is. Yeah, it was really lucky, to be honest. And so just the right time, right place. Yeah, it was good.
So look, from there, obviously, I'm sure there was a bit of a ceiling
Yeah.
or a bit of a limit to what you could do at stream as well. So where did that sort of lead you to? And like, obviously, it opened up to where you could take your career at
Yeah,
that
so
stage as
I
well.
at that point I realized, okay, they're not going to pay me for being a programmer because they don't really have that role. They were paying me in,
Yeah.
this is how long ago this was, like HMV vouchers for like CDs, whenever those were a thing. And so they were trying to like bump my salary,
That's
but like I
amazing.
couldn't pay rent with CD vouchers. It turns out, and so I was kind of running out of options. And then this is kind of a bit of a theme, but I met a girl, and then she was moving to Edinburgh in Scotland, and so I was like, okay, I can do that. And so so I was just like up sticks, moved to Edinburgh, and then I was like, okay. Reached there, found it really difficult because I didn't have professional quals. I didn't have, I didn't have
Oh,
like
yeah.
an amazing CV. I was kind of not from there. And so I spent 6 months looking for work, trying to find something to do. It was really tough. And then eventually I found a gig working for a guy creating like competition websites and this sort of stuff. And so I was putting like when you used to have dial up, I used to put like premium dialers into websites so that they would phone premium numbers and then scam a bunch of money off you, and then for the promise of winning a competition at some point. So that's what this guy was building. And I was just like, I need a job. And so I rocked into that, and weirdly, like I learned a bunch of things. I was doing Perl and a bunch of other languages that were pretty interesting. And so once he could no longer pay me, I started looking for another job, and then another job,
Yeah.
right? And then eventually, at the point I felt like I was doing proper programming was probably when I started working for the Halifax Bank of Scotland, which is a big organization in the time. John, you probably know, and it's like huge organization. And so I was building internal systems, things to transfer accounts between banks, and I again getting that role, I basically applied. I did the technical test, and they hired me. And I thought, that must be a mistake. And so I asked them, and they were like, later, after I was pretty happy, I was over the imposter syndrome, and they said, "Oh, you aced the test way beyond anybody else that we interviewed, and
Wow.
so like you were just the obvious choice, even though I didn't have great, quals or credentials or anything." And so, so that was the big one, and then I stayed there for 4 years until I met a different girl and I moved to New Zealand. So.
How did you?
How did you?
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
Pete, how did you enjoy
I
Edinburgh?
loved Edinburgh. Edinburgh is one of my favorite cities in the world. It is Baltic. Like it was really cold comparatively, but like to New Zealand. But it is beautiful architecture. The people are amazing. It's a very easy move from Ireland. I didn't do the whole London thing. It was just a little bit easier to kind of. I felt I got on pretty easy with people in Edinburgh, and it just seemed like home pretty quickly. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was telling you, Pete, recently I had my first trip to Edinburgh when I was back, and yeah, I felt the same thing. It's an amazing city, and I actually look back on it, it would have been a great place to go in your early 20s, and a good place to, as you say, that's not massively far away from the Irish culture, but obviously a lot bigger, and it's got a lot more going on in it.
Yes, summer there's great,
yeah,
and you have you have Edinburgh Festival and Fringe and all that kind of stuff. It's a great place.
Yeah, I always if people are going to Edinburgh, I say if you can go in August, that's kind of prime time. You might get a few days good weather, but you'll definitely get a great time in the festival and the Fringe and stuff like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, summer you can sleep in and miss it, but it's but generally there's always good crack around. So yeah, it's good.
So New Zealand happened. You said it was a girl. It was a New Zealand.
Yeah,
girl,
my wife. And so it was. We heard she was doing her OE, and what Kiwis will call like going overseas and spending a year or two and working in a pub in London normally. And so she was doing her OE. She was in Edinburgh, and then her visa ran out, and then we had a tough decision to make. And we'd been together less than a year, I think, and I was like, okay, like New Zealand, that sounds like good fun. Let's do that. And so just up sticks, moved to New Zealand. I'd never been to New Zealand, didn't really contemplate how far away it was. Like got on a plane, and I remember actually, when we started over Australia on like the northwest coast of Australia, I got up and started getting my bags out, of the like overhead and everything. I was like, okay, let's get sorted. And like back.
Yeah, 7 hours left.
Oh, okay, we've still got another like 6 hours or something to go before we actually land in New Zealand. I hadn't realized just how far away it was. But and then landed in New Zealand, and so that was good. I worked for a company for like 6 years when I first got here. That was doing legal software. It was a company called Adorant on the North Shore of Auckland.
Yeah,
great outfit, like great incubator of talent actually, and I probably built some of the best software as an engineer that I've ever built there. And so I had a really good. I worked with some people from Scotland actually, and that's probably how I got the job. I did the job on the phone from Edinburgh, on Skype audio. I had a beer in one hand when I was doing it, so because it wasn't a video call in those days, and so I think that might have put me like just on an even enough keel to nail the interview, but I wouldn't advise that. It's not really good career advice, but
no.
But I ended up getting that job and building great software with some amazing people for like 6 years until I decided I needed another change and I needed to get closer to the customer story. And and I built Windows Phone apps for a year whenever they were a thing. So I went and did that. And then ended up in a company called PushPay, which was a high growth startup. It was very small at the time. It was maybe engineer number 6 or something like that. And I was just like a software engineer. I was there for 9.5 years. It was quite a long time. And by the time I left, I was VP of Engineering, and I had a team of 120 people. The company went from like 20 people to 550 in the course of time.
So when you started there, the role that you went in at, was it a senior engineer? Was it?
Yeah, senior software engineer. I think we had really egotistical titles or something. I think we had like master engineer or some nonsense like that. But but then it was basically a senior engineer. And when I started, I was cutting code on the platform, but very quickly I moved into. I'd been growing into the DevOps and continuous integration and development and deployment space, and so then I built the SRE practice there. Back when SRE was just a book, and so built the SRE practice. Did a bunch of data center migrations. Went into AWS. We ran our stuff in AWS. Built a whole team. Took on security, data science, and then got the opportunity to go into VP of Engineering eventually there. And that was really when I started getting into like executive leadership. But before that, I'd been running my team. I had a brief stint running a team prior to PushPay, but this was the real first time I'd done it. And that was a real step change and quite a difficult process, I think, to go through. But yeah.
Just going to ask there, Pete, at what point did you actually decide that you wanted to go down that kind of management route?
I don't this is controversial, but I think sometimes it's kind of like politics. If you really want to get into it, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like I think, you get to a point where it's the right thing to do for other reasons, not because you want to be in leadership.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because you're chasing the decision making, or it's because maybe it's, the financial constraint and you think that's what success looks like. Maybe it's some illusion of power or something else. But for me, it was mainly around how do I be the one that makes the decisions? And then you get there and you realize you're not the one that makes the decisions, but that's a whole different story. And so, but it is, I think it's like reluctant leadership is sometimes a real strength.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Look, it's just like, because you see a lot of stories where there is people in their career who, the minute they're like, they start an individual contributor as like a specialist in some area, and even before they've actually been really good at that, they're like, well, how can I be a manager? How can I get there? How can I get there? And they're thinking about that game constantly. But then those people who get into those roles, they turn out to, like, in a lot of instances, they fail because they've tried to push it too quickly. Whereas if you let it happen a little bit more naturally and holistically, then you're probably better set for it in the long term. Is that sort of like what you feel was your approach to it
100%.
then?
So, like, management is not a generic career. Like, you can't take a manager working in the Gap, right, and give them to manage an engineering team, software engineering team. Right? And the reason for that is there is an engineering manager. There are like quality managers. There are, product managers. They're all contextual managers, right? And if you don't build the context first, then you won't be able to be effective being a contextual manager. And if you lose the context, you essentially slowly degrade your ability to manage people for that context. And I think that that's something people forget. They get lost in the management and the theater of work and the stuff that happens around work, and they think that's where the value is.
Yeah.
It's not. It's in the work. And so I think that that is super important. So you need to build that basis to begin with. And I had a couple of people that stopped me going into management early and said, no, take your time. Like, build your base. And I did. And that really, really helped, to be honest. And I think,
How did you feel at the time when you were sort of told not to do that? Were you like, I'm ready for it? Or did you sort of like, what was like, or were you like, oh yeah, I accept what you're saying? Like, because it's, again, you're probably thinking like everyone wants to make more money, and that's a way of making more money. You know what I mean? So,
truth be told, I didn't have a career plan. I didn't think about it in those terms. I just was still amazed that people paid me for something I was interested in doing. Right? And that every couple of years they paid me more. I was like, oh, it's crazy. And so, and then I just, that was a really good flywheel. Like, if you're interested and motivated in something, right, you're going to put more time in it. You're going to put more effort into it. You're going to try to continuously improve. You're going to get better at it. You're going to get better at it. You're going to get paid more money. You get paid more money. It kind of helps motivate you a little bit more, but you're still really doing it for the love of the thing. And it just keeps going and going.
Yeah.
And I think, I never understood, because when I was young and I was quite naive, why people ended up in careers that they didn't love. Talk about like waving privilege around, but like, that's a kind of a thing. You're going, well, like, how do people end up doing things they don't love? I don't really understand. I've just happened to luck in myself into a career that I like doing, that pays well.
Yeah. And then from a perspective, because obviously you worked your way through the system and get yourself in a scenario where you were like in the right place to move into that role. But then when you get into that role and you're thinking about how your engineering function should look and how you should put all the pieces together and get it all functioning right, like, was that a big challenge for you? Or like, how, because then you have control of it, you know what I mean? What do you do with that control, and how do you make sure that you're going to be effective in the role?
It's a series of imposter syndrome mostly. So like, everybody has that. And again, it's a little bit of a driver for you. Like, if you can control it, it's a good driver. People say, think like, talk about imposter syndrome like it's completely negative, and it can be. But so when I got in there, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, someday somebody's going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and so I should read wider. I should try and follow more blog posts. Try and talk to people a little bit more. I got into a habit of like socializing ideas a little bit early. It's like, I'm thinking about doing. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. So like, you get feedback pretty quickly and you just adapted. And then overall, like you start to then build confidence and that has momentum. Then you go, okay, I'm going to do this thing now because it's the right thing to do. And so I'm going to form my team this way. I'm going to, try to, set this roadmap, do this thing, make this bet. Like those were all as a result of moving in concentric circles of socialization, because I always thought, somebody's going to figure out that I'm, I should be here because I didn't do it. I didn't finish my degree or whatever the thing that was holding me back at the time.
Yeah.
See, always wonder, Pete, like, well, obviously with your role, even your current role at the moment, working in such a, organization that's working across different time zones, obviously different countries, different cultures, engineers. How do you go about sort of managing that at your level, and how do you make sure you get the best, or you foster a culture within the business to get the best out of everyone when it's so different, like New Zealand to America to Asia? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So first of all, like as you move up, you need to maintain a certain couple of things. So for a lot of time, you need people to feel like you could do their job a little bit. They don't like, I'm very much a lead from the front type of person. I don't really do the lead from behind type thing. And so I try to demonstrate and try to, get out ahead of the conversation, and be in the technical domain and, as much as I possibly can. And so that's part of it. So I let that do a lot of the talking. When it starts to go across time zones, cultures, that sort of thing, there are differences to the way that different cultures work and different, different business practices, that sort of thing. But like, I had to change when I moved to the other side of the world. So I felt like I had like a unique perspective. I had to change the way I talk sometimes. So people will say, somebody told me yesterday that I mumble a lot. I get that a lot. It was a Derry thing. And so, so you have to change the way you talk, or you have to change your ideas a little bit to adapt. And so you got to look at it like different people are approaching the conversation from different ways, and they want communication in different ways. And so you've got to try and meet somewhere in the middle. And I remember doing it was actually when I was at Halifax Bank of Scotland, they did one of those exercises where you do like colored Lego bricks and you understand what kind of communicator you are, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, I thought it was corporate nonsense, but I did pick up a few things from it. And so when you go across in different cultures, there are some, different cultures, like in the US, they respect hierarchy a lot more. They seem to have, quite a strong view of like how the hierarchy works, and that equals, influence and power or something. So you kind of adapt to that. That also means that they tend to talk about themselves a lot more. Kiwis tend to, put themselves down a little bit more, and it kind of doesn't come across well. So you figure this out quite quickly.
Yeah.
And then you adapt the way that you speak. But the work has to lead it, right? And I think that's the thing. If people see through it, if it's just word salad, or you're just rolling out tropes or something like that. And so you've got to meet people, connect with them, demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability, like show them integrity, and then move forward from there. And so that translates incredibly well, pretty much everywhere. That's what I found. Yeah.
And then look, in terms of where you're at the moment, so how many are you leading at the moment? What's the size of the org?
The size of the org is probably about 260, 270 right now. It kind of changes all the time. I have a team of around 85 or so at last. Yeah, Pushpay had a team of about 120 whenever I left, and that was pretty big. 85's, every organization is different, so yeah, it's relatively big. Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, sorry, I was just going to say, for anyone that doesn't know what Auror do or what they're all about, do you mind just giving us a sort of overview?
Yeah, sure. So Auror is basically retail crime intelligence, is what we call it. And so essentially the original problem we're trying to solve is that there are a lot of incidents happening in stores, everything from like retail stores. So, your Walmarts, your Woolies, your these types. And so in those stores, there are, there's theft, shoplifting, there's aggressive, and then there's violent behavior. And so a lot of this is going underreported, and was whenever Auror started. And so the first problem to solve was how do we make sure we can make sure those events are reported as much as possible from stores, so that we can then solve for the outcome, which is preventing them in the first place, right? So there's reporting them to police, that is understanding the network of gangs and that are performing these events, and making sure we're stopping potentially violent offenders before they get trying to get out the store with a bunch of product. So that's essentially what we're trying to solve, and we use a bunch of different technologies and practices and ways to do that. But ultimately, it's a SaaS application to try and help retailers and stores protect their people and their product.
Wow. The US market's a big one for you, Pete, right?
Yeah, US is the biggest market. That's where all of the all of the action is, I suppose. But like we started off in New Zealand, proved the model, and moved to Australia, the US, and the UK.
And well, one of the things on, I guess, the security aspect and AI as well, Pete, is obviously a big sort of topic at the moment. So what are you guys doing with incorporating AI into the business?
Yeah, so Auror has been using AI in one way, shape, or form for quite a while. And so we try to figure out, these are the same types of products getting stolen across different retailers. Like, how can we help build this graph, if you like, of knowledge? So some of that is like machine learning to figure that out.
Yeah.
We try to figure out if it's the same individuals doing it. And so that has like looking at the MO, looking at, again, types of things that are going on there. And then, recently we've launched or subject recognition as well, which starts to use more visual AI and that sort of stuff to figure out, if they're the same people, but like ultimately keeping a human in the loop. So, there is, from a safety perspective, like we have a pretty rigorous process around ethical AI use. We actually publish white papers on it as well. So like there is a kind of like if not us, then who, is kind of, can we be the right people to solve this in the right way for the right outcomes that doesn't compromise privacy and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. So there's using it obviously from the product side of things, but then using it for your teams internally. Has that been something that's started to be adopted?
Yeah, by very much so. And not just our engineers, right through our organization, actually. And so, look, a lot of organizations are doing this. So a lot of organizations are going, how can we AI everything, right? It's we talk about the bubble, we talk about the hype cycle. This one has more legs than the last hype cycle. We've blockchain and Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. But it's AI is reaching into every part of every organization. And so for us, that is, again, right across the organization. But for developers, we're using AI coding assistants. And so, like a lot of people, we started off with Copilot. We use Cursor quite a lot. So pretty much all our team are using Cursor. We use their like pull request analysis, like code review tool, which is BugBot, which is actually really good. We use Claude, we have Gemini, we have ChatGPT, we have all of the things. And we have an overworked security team that does reviews on these things and tries to figure out just what the damage could be. And so, so we have used quite a lot of them. We've been very, obviously very careful about the kind of things that we pick up, but ultimately these things are right at the moment for the last, year and a half, 2, have been like, leapfrogging each other. And so that's why none of this is quite settled just yet. So a lot of these right throughout the organization.
It's interesting. Yeah, well, how quickly businesses are adopting it and adopting it in the right way. But like, how do you like from a productivity and efficiency perspective? Is that the main gains in terms of people being faster, or is it producing better quality, or is it a blend of both?
So I don't think there is a clear picture yet. No, and this is, there are some people that will say, AI coding, vibe coding, everything, and it's great. And that is great a lot for for early stage. You can prototype really quickly and you can get things going very, very fast. You can actually get going really fast. But like for large code bases that exist that are complex, it's a little bit more difficult to discern what the impact is. And there are a lot of people kind of right now kind of thinking, is there a net positive impact? There's definitely not a net negative impact for most people, if you have good, review procedures and that sort of stuff. But a lot of people are trying to figure out exactly what the net benefit is. And for us, like the hope is that it's productivity more than anything else, right? It is faster time to market. And it is, reducing the overall cost while increasing scale, right? The difficulty is there is no measure for productivity inside of engineering that works. Lots of people have tried, right? And so, like McKinsey have definitely tried to define this, and some would say, me included, that wasn't really what productivity is. It's because ultimately you can measure the inputs, like how many hours people put in. You can measure the outputs, how many lines of code they produce, but you can't measure the impact that easily. And so if the goal was to produce lots of lines of code, sure, I could measure the productivity of these AI tools easily, but I couldn't tell you whether it's having a positive impact as easily. And so that's where the difficulty lies. So if you try to like work backwards from that, it's very hard to figure out right now what the net benefit is. There are a couple of things I would point out. For inquiry, for figuring out exactly how something works, finding the right code quickly, really good. Like I use it all the time. I've stopped asking engineers dumb questions about code, and I just go and ask AI. And I can find it, and I know enough to read code, so I can go and find the specific code, read it, and go, yeah, I can confirm that. That's great. Like, does it really well. I can find it like a lot of people using that. Writing tests, great. Like engineers have been complaining about writing unit tests and other types of tests for decades. It'll write tests. Like you can do that. It's great. And prototyping is really great. But what we're finding, and what we'll probably find as an industry, is like senior engineers it's a force multiplier. But it's like an amplifier, like sound electronics. Like if you have a bad signal, it'll amplify the bad and the good. Good signal, it'll amplify the good. And so what we're finding is that, for a very junior and intermediate engineer, it can really amplify and some of the bad code and some of the quality that they need to learn from, and overwhelm the system so that they don't have the time to learn from this in the way that they should, which means, unfortunately, the gap between junior and senior feels like it's going to keep growing.
Because that's the thing. It was sort of leads me on. It's like, where do you feel like the type of person that's going to succeed in engineering long term? What are going to be the characteristics of a person who's going to? Because I'm sure you're getting people with the AI adoption as well. You're getting people who probably are a bit more senior and a bit more resistant to it because they've always done it their way. So what sort of characteristics do you feel is going to keep you employable over the next coming like 5 to 10 years?
Things. So the first is like your first principles. They don't change. Like AI is just more code on top of more code on top of more code, right? But if you boil it back to like first principles, like if you understand exactly how networking works, or exactly how selection, iteration, all of these types of things work inside of code, if you know the core first principles, then those will stay with you. The second thing is, can you learn? And so that is about building a mental model for how something works and applying it. And so I often, when I interview people, actually test for whether they can learn. It's actually it's a much better way than just knowledge. Knowledge is transient, right? Like since the internet, like we've all got access to the same knowledge, but why are we not all as smart or not all as effective, I should say? And the reason is like how quickly we can learn. Because if you start day one in a company, you're not applying all of the wealth of knowledge that you have. You're learning. Can you learn? Can you model things quickly and apply them and adapt? Those are the skills that will see you right the way through.
It's interesting you mention that because I've been listening. Obviously, I listen to a lot of podcasts at the moment. I was listening to one with some scientist recently who was saying that ChatGPT is going to make people lazy and they're going to lose the functionality of their brain, because a lot of the stuff that you have to use your brain to do, people are going to get lazy and get ChatGPT to do it or AI to do it. So he's saying it's going to be a dumber society as we move on, unless you obviously change and adapt
it is
to it.
going to, like, reasoning is improving over time, but like there it is going to get some things wrong. And if you're not thinking critically about what it says, then yeah, you're going to get overrun by it. You can I still vibe code and like do a bunch of stuff in the weekends, and so and sometimes you see it getting away from you. You're like, I actually don't know what this does anymore. Okay. And so I switch it up and I say to the AI coding assistant, say, no, we're going to change roles. You're going to tell me what to do and I'm going to code it. Right. So you break it down, I'm going to code it and I'll learn it. Okay. Now we're going to switch back. Now I have confidence. Now I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it. And so it's pairing with it, going back and forth. And I think that can help you be more critical about it. And if you apply that to other things that you use AI for, like, don't just accept what it gives you, be critical about it, switch up the roles a little bit and put yourself back in the mix. Right. And so that is it's a little bit safer, and it kind of allows you to kind of, make sure you're thinking critically going forward.
Yeah.
The obviously the tech, it's funny, Pete, obviously the technology industry over the years has always adapted and changed. And I suppose with, I guess, a role that you've been in your prior role, you've got a lens on not just New Zealand, but different countries as well. So maybe outside AI, particularly in New Zealand, how do you think the industry is going to look over the coming years? Because there is so much change and so much adoption, and there's a lot that goes on or there has been a lot that's gone on. So what do you see coming over the horizon in the future?
It's hard to say at the moment. I think we're all still like, COVID's had a massive impact. We're not done with that thing. Like there's still lasting impacts from that. There's the kind of remote work, distributed work aspect that has changed quite a lot. And so then we start to kind of find that people were getting disconnected. Like, people are not as engaged sometimes in the organization. So like, organizations have to work harder to make sure that they're communicating well, that we're all staying engaged. If we're all distributed teams, we're all working over different time zones, we had to change the mode of communication. We can't just all get on a phone call or get on a video call. We have to, like, okay, we're all using Slack or we're all using Teams. Like, we have to change this up. And then, you start finding that your written communication has to change a little bit because, the point's not getting across. It's a little bit too terse or something else. And so we're all still adapting to the impacts that have happened since COVID, I feel. I think the other ways we're kind of changing is, I'm curious about, again, how people can onboard into this career and move through it safely and well.
Yeah.
We have a new set of challenges. I don't think it's quite a lot different, I suppose, than the previous challenges. Like, ever since throughout my career, people have been saying that something's going to replace software engineers, for example. Right? I've had early it was like third generation languages, or kind of like, VB, for example, like, it's just like English, anybody could write it. It wasn't just like, not everybody could write it. But that was the fear, it's going to replace programmers. And then it was like, I did spend a lot of time in code generation. It was like, we're going to generate all the code. That didn't happen, And then this next one, and it's like, is AI going to change, like, fundamentally replace software engineering? I think it'll replace software engineers that can't adapt, learn, go back to first. I think it will, quite often. And should it? I don't know. But that is a risk. But at the same time, do we think that we've saturated our appetite for software as a, like, as a world, right? And so therefore, if we're producing more software, like, it doesn't mean necessarily that we need fewer engineers. And so I think that's something we need to keep in mind. I think for us, in distributed teams, it's all about communication for us. Like that is the thing that has probably had the biggest impact. And we need to be a heck of a lot more intentional about it, and try to keep people engaged in the problems that we're trying to solve and the mission that we're on. It's really easy to become, kind of disconnected and disaffected by, societal impacts or anything else when you're just kind of sitting in a remote team not doing anything. But like remote workers can be the best and can really like we're finding that we can be more effective as a community. And so I think if we can actually just work on a bunch of the core principles, and we'll get a lot further.
So have you been sort of resistant as well? Because like obviously we've got a lot of clients that we work with around the New Zealand market, and we see different approaches now to how that remote working is and stuff like that. We're seeing people going from 3 days at home, 2 days now, and they're being told they have to come in 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Like, do you think that's why do people think that's a good thing after giving that flexibility for a long time? And how, you find that challenge to bring people back or resisting
it's a lack of adaptation. Right.
Yeah.
And so like we still have people for the large part can choose where they want to work. We have people all across New Zealand. We don't have mandated in office days. We don't have any of that stuff, but we've had to change in order to and adapt in order to be successful at that. I think, and we're still figuring it out. Right. And so it's easy to just say, actually, this isn't working. Like, let's go back to our old ways of working, et cetera. And some companies are going to be most successful doing that. That's fine. For us, we're pretty committed to making sure that we can make this work. And so, yeah, it is definitely a thing. I can understand that some companies feel the pressure to do it, and they have started to do it. But again, like, yeah, we're not running into that right now. We're gonna keep working at it, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, Pete. Well, look, thanks very much for coming on. That was really interesting to get a bit of a backstory into where you came. It's funny, like where you came from, as we've come from the same city and we didn't actually meet each other until obviously a few years ago at an event. But it was great to have you on the podcast coming from hometown and hearing your story as well, and also the connection. It's sort of fun, the connection to Edinburgh as well, and Sean being from Edinburgh. It's sort of like it's a nice story, and we're all here in New Zealand. I know, but no, we really enjoyed the chat. Great to have you on. Really, really good insights as well, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will take some good stuff from that. To our listeners and our viewers, if you continue to like the content, please follow, share wherever you can, and we'll see you for the next podcast. Thanks very much.
Cheers.